Tennis elbow or lateral epicondylitis is pain on the outside of the elbow. So an easy way to identify it is if the discomfort's on my right arm, I make a C shape with the left hand, pop that C on the inside of the elbow. My fingers then should line up with a little bony protrusion on the outside of the elbow. That is the lateral epicondyle that the tendon that's started to degenerate attaches to. So that's typically the site of the pain itself. Now, one thing to note is that you don't have to be a tennis player to have tennis elbow. Actually, it's only about 5 to 10% of reported cases for tennis elbow are actually tennis players. So it can come from a bunch of different causes. Just because you don't play tennis doesn't mean you can't get tennis elbow. So a little bit more about that tendon itself. We have muscles that run down the top side of the arm here, which are our extensors, which hinge the wrist upwards, this extended motion here. Now, where some of those extensors come down and attach into, the tendon attaches to that lateral epicondyle. If you're getting discomfort on the other side of the arm, where the flexors come down, which hinge the wrist downwards into the inside, the medial epicondyle, that's more typical for golfer's elbow. That's a different topic in itself. With this discomfort on the outside of the elbow, typically there's three main causes. So if one person tells you there's a one size fixes all for tennis elbow, that's maybe an oversimplification. So our first potential cause of tennis elbow is actually going to be the weakness of the flexors on the inside of the elbow that hinge the wrist downwards. Now, if these muscles can't hold the necessary tension for the actions you're completing, what we then do to compensate for that is to preload the extensors and create more tension on the extensors, which attach down into that tendon itself to create enough tension to complete the motion. An easy way to recognize this is actually with the tennis players themselves. So when they go to serve, what they'll do to preload those extensors is actually they'll lock that wrist into a lot of extension, and it will stay locked for that motion through. That'll take some of that pressure away from the flexors on the inside, but then we're asking those extensors on the outside of the arm to do a lot more work. Our second potential cause for tennis elbow is actually improper shoulder alignment. A lot of the times when we've got a point of discomfort, we need to look above or below that point of discomfort to then identify what's truly causing our issue. So with the shoulder alignment, if we're spending extended periods of time in what's called medial rotation, which is where the hand's rotated downwards, you see this a lot if you're walking around and your thumbs point across the body naturally when your hands hang, and you see the shoulders rotate forwards and inwards towards the midline of the body. Now, as we do that, as the arm rotates, what we get is the distance that the extensors now have to go from that tendon on the outside of the elbow to the inside of the wrist where they're attached here. We've lengthened that position now with the rotation of the arm. So with that rotation, it's like an elastic band. You stretch an elastic band and you hold it there for long enough, it doesn't go back to its starting position. It weakens, it loses some of that potential. When we're in that position for an extended period of time, that's when we can then start to see the weakness of the extensor muscles. Also, what goes hand in hand with that, the flexor muscles on the inside with that internal rotation position then shorten. So actually typically they get tighter in this position. So already you can see how we've got an option can be a weakness of the flexors, or we've got a weakness of the extensor muscles. So there isn't a one size fits all for tennis elbow. Now, a third potential cause for tennis elbow, this tends to happen in people that do play sports a lot more active, say throwing sports, tennis, racket sports as well. Now, this is to do with the shoulder being able to decelerate the arm effectively. So what we get essentially, if you're hitting a serve or if you're throwing, what you'll see is as you throw, there's going to be this point where we need to slow the arm down. We need to decelerate the arm so that it's not just shooting off across the pitch or the field or whatever sport you're playing. Now, if the shoulder can't appropriately decelerate the arm, we then rely on the extensors to help with that deceleration of the arm, which ultimately all we're doing is placing more force through those muscles than they're actually designed to do, or that they're conditioned to do. So what are some of the things you can do to start addressing that tennis elbow? Well, like any degeneration, we need to give the body time to heal. So there will be a period of rest away from whatever activity it was that was causing you that discomfort. So if you're playing a lot of tennis and you're getting your tennis elbow, reducing the volume of tennis can help with you finding the root cause of that tennis elbow, addressing it so that you can then get back to playing much more consistently. An option as well is ice. One thing I would say is that part of our healing process is inflammation. That's stage 1 of our healing process. So just because something's inflamed doesn't mean you should always ice it. So self-massage can also be quite good for tennis elbow. This is designed to try and break up scar tissue that may be forming between the fibers of the tendon itself. So typically what we go is cross-distal massage. So if you think the tendon runs down this way into that lateral epicondyle, so then I want to try and take 2 fingers and then just gently massage perpendicular to the line of that tendon. What that allows us to do is just get a little bit of sort of a flossing motion, a rubbing motion across there, just designed to prevent any weakness being created in that tendon itself. I would definitely go gentle with that one starting off. We can also stretch as well. So some of the muscles that may have gotten tighter or may have been tight and caused our poor alignment in the first place. So things like the flexors, if we've got that internal rotation of the shoulder, but then also if you've got the internal rotation of the shoulder, the muscles of the chest, the pec that runs up into the front of the shoulder, if that's tight, that can again lead to that internal rotation of the shoulder towards the midline of the body. So spending a bit of time opening them up, giving them a bit more range of motion could certainly reduce the amount of strain we're then placing on the tennis elbow itself. Now a big part is going to be strengthening exercises, particularly around the shoulder and the back, where we can look to try and improve not only our posture for that alignment of the arm itself, but also so that they're conditioned to decelerate the arm as we're playing sports too. Those are going to be a huge staple, looking to try and encourage external rotation. So something like a side-lying external rotation would work really well for that as a starting place. Particularly trying to incorporate some of the upper back musculature as well would be hugely beneficial. Things like a face pull work wonderfully for that. As well, we can start to condition the forearm for the loads that are going to be placed through it. So you're looking at things like isometrics, but also eccentrics from both flexion and extension, depending on where the limiting factor is. It's important to note that this is not medical advice or a diagnosis. This is just information provision in education. If you're unsure, absolutely go and see a professional. If you have any questions or want to know more, you can contact me through my website. I'll see you in the next one.